start with a soft, solemn piano melody. For 4 long, agonizing years, Paris held its breath. A city of light plunged into darkness, living under the shadow of the swastika. German flags desecrated the Eiffel Tower, the proud symbol of France. The vibrant cafes, once filled with laughter and debate, fell silent. Fear became the new language of the streets, a cold whisper in every alleyway. Parisians walked with their heads down, their spirits crushed but not extinguished, because beneath the surface of this occupied city, a quiet, defiant heartbeat of resistance never, ever stopped. It was a promise, a vow whispered in the dark, that Paris would one day be free again. Music begins to build with a sense of underlying tension and hope. August 1944. The summer air, thick with heat and apprehension, started to carry new whispers. Rumors, like wildfire, spread from person to person. The Allies were coming. They had landed in Normandy. They were breaking through the German lines. They were near. This spark of hope ignited a fire of rebellion that had been smoldering for 4 years. The French resistance, the FFI, moved from the shadows into the light. Brave railway workers, the lifeblood of the nation's transport, began a campaign of sabotage, crippling German supply lines and troop movements. They derailed trains, cut communication lines, and created chaos for the occupying forces. In hidden basements, printers risked their lives, their presses clanking out not propaganda, but truth. They forged identification papers, giving new lives to those hunted by the Gestapo, and printed underground newspapers that told Parisians what the censored official channels would not, that liberation was at hand. Inspired, the people of Paris rose up. This wasn't just a military action, it was the soul of the city reclaiming itself. What started as small acts of defiance exploded into a full-blown insurrection. The grand boulevards, designed for parades and commerce, became battlegrounds. Ordinary citizens, men, women, even teenagers, tore up the streets. They overturned buses, ripped cobblestones from the ground, and built barricades, just as their revolutionary ancestors had done. A barricade of piled-up furniture and sandbags became a fortress of freedom. The spirit of 1789 was reborn in the heart of 1944 France, a defiant roar against tyranny. Paris was fighting back, block by block, street by street. Orchestral music begins to swell, becoming more powerful and cinematic. Meanwhile, from the west, the sound of thunder rolled across the French countryside. It wasn't a storm. It was the formidable power of General George Patton's Third Army, a steel juggernaut chewing up miles of territory, relentlessly pushing the Germans back toward their own border. The liberation of Paris seemed inevitable, just over the horizon. But at the Allied High Command, Supreme Commander Dwight D. Eisenhower hesitated. His strategic goal was Berlin. A direct assault on a densely populated city like Paris could result in a brutal, drawn-out battle. He feared catastrophic casualties among his soldiers and the civilians they were trying to save. More than that, he feared the destruction of Paris itself, a treasure of Western civilization. The risk of turning the beautiful city into a pile of rubble, like Warsaw or Stalingrad, was too great. The initial plan was to bypass the city and encircle it, letting it wither on the vine. But Paris couldn't wait. As the fighting intensified within the city walls, the resistance grew desperate. They were outgunned and running low on ammunition. They needed help. A clandestine radio transmitter crackled to life, broadcasting a desperate plea that echoed across the airwaves to the Allied command. The message was clear and heartbreaking. Paris is fighting for its honor. Paris is at the point of starvation. We plead with you. Don't abandon us. The message reached the ears of the Free French leader, General Charles de Gaulle, who passionately argued that the honor of France demanded that French soldiers be the ones to liberate their capital. The plea and the political pressure worked. Eisenhower reversed his decision. The order was given. The Allies would move on Paris immediately. Music becomes triumphant and emotionally charged. On the evening of August 24th, the vanguard of the Liberation Force broke through. It wasn't the Americans or the British who entered first, but the French. Tanks from General Philippe Leclerc's 2nd Armored Division, many named after famous French victories and heroes, thundered through the southern gates of the city. The sight was electrifying. After 4 years of seeing the enemy's flag, Parisians saw their own soldiers, their own tricolor flag waving from the turrets. The city erupted. Crowds poured into the streets, ignoring the danger. They swarmed the tanks, hugging the soldiers, offering them wine and flowers, their faces streaked with tears of joy. The deep, solemn bells of Notre Dame began to ring, soon joined by every church bell in the city. A joyous, deafening chorus of freedom that had been silent for years. But the battle wasn't over. German snipers, hidden on rooftops, still fired down on the celebrating crowds and advancing soldiers. The joyous celebration was punctuated by the sharp crack of rifles and the rattle of machine gun fire, a chaotic symphony of liberation. That night, against all odds, the tricolor flag was raised once more over the Hôtel de Ville, the city hall. Paris was breathing again. The next morning, August 25th, marked the final act. The German military governor of Paris, General Dietrich von Choltitz, faced his destiny. He was a loyal German officer, but he was also a man who understood history. In his bunker, the phone lines to Berlin burned with furious orders directly from Adolf Hitler. The Führer was screaming, demanding to know, "Is Paris burning?" Hitler's command was absolute and monstrous. If the Allies were to take Paris, they would take a pile of ashes. Every bridge, every monument, every historic building was to be wired with explosives and utterly destroyed. But Choltitz, looking out at the city he had come to respect, made a decision that would save it. He refused the order. He chose to defy his Führer and preserve one of the world's greatest cultural treasures. That morning, he formally signed the instrument of surrender. He had the power to destroy Paris, but he chose to save it. Music reaches a powerful emotional crescendo, then softens slightly for a legacy feel. Later that day, the symbol of Free France, General Charles de Gaulle, returned to his capital. He began a historic walk down the grandest avenue in the world, the Champs-Élysées, from the Arc de Triomphe to Notre Dame. It was not a military parade, it was a pilgrimage. He was surrounded not just by soldiers, but by the people of Paris. Millions lined the streets, a sea of ecstatic faces. They sang the Marseillaise with a passion and a meaning it hadn't had in years. The air was filled with a mix of joyous songs, the ringing of bells, the cheers of the crowd, and the lingering, sporadic crackle of sniper fire from the last holdouts. It was a moment of pure, unbridled emotion, joy, relief, sorrow for those who were lost, and fierce, unshakable pride. The liberation of Paris was more than just a strategic victory in a world war. For the French people, it was a moment of national rebirth. It was proof that even in the darkest of times, the flame of freedom can never be truly extinguished. It was a city and a nation taking back its identity, its culture, and its soul. The bells of August 1944 didn't just signal the end of occupation. They announced the return of hope to the world. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey back in time. If you found this story as moving as we did, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more stories from history. We'll see you in the next one.